So I want to think about COVID and its impact on teaching, and then also in our own instruction as far as students are concerned. So let's play with a couple of scenarios here, and I think this is a really interesting escalation situation that we find ourselves in because of COVID. So we'll start up here, and COVID has actually forced educational institutions to think about COVID and health protocols in a way that they hadn't before, right? So if we think about that, how has COVID affected us? Well, we've got remote teaching or remote virtual conferences or whatever, however you want to say that. And so what's been the outflow of that? That has kind of forced us to think about how do we want to teach? And some of that has to go with how do we teach in the past, right? So COVID's forced us to remote. It's also forced us to think about teaching in an interesting way. When you think about teaching, though, this sort of teaching remotely has created a situation where teacher prep becomes much more significant than it was before, or much more involved than it was before, and this is leading to teacher exhaustion, the fact that it's not sustainable, etc. Okay, and so this is a classic escalation situation in that we still have remote. Okay, we still want to teach our students or be taught in a remote fashion. COVID's not going anywhere fast, right? And so, but we still have to do the prep, and it's still leading to more exhaustion. So you get this sort of escalation situation, right? It's classic system diagram of an escalation. So the question becomes, what do we do, right? If it's not sustainable and we can't keep going the way that we're going right now, what are the possibilities of teaching differently or teaching with different goals or whatever it has to do? So one of them has to do with remote. Okay, what are we actually trying to accomplish with remote? What are the goals of remote? Okay, is it to teach all the same content at the same speed no matter what? Is it relationship? There's all kinds of different possibilities there. The other thing that is fascinating to think about is, what are we prepping for, right? Right? Are we prepping for synchronous day-by-day situations, or are we prepping for something different? So let's pretend for a second that we're prepping for something different. It's back to what are our goals, right? What are we actually doing, and is there a way to have remote be synchronous and asynchronous in a way to where it's sustainable for the teacher? There's still prep involved, but it's not killing us, and this exhaustion piece is not actually our reality, right? We're actually thinking about sustainability. That's the question on the table and something for us to consider. So for a minute, just think about those synchronous times, right? Okay, and then what leads into those synchronous times, right? How do you set up on both sides of a synchronous class? This becomes kind of an interesting question, right? Move this up here. All right, so if we think about these as asynchronous, right, then these pieces can live outside of our teacher prep time, but they can absolutely feed into, actually both ways, they can actually feed into that synchronous time. And so how do you design, right? Not so that you're losing the synchronous piece, but so that you're enhancing it and making it more focused and deeper, right? That leads to an interesting question.